Right, we're back for counterpoints. It is the break before the playoffs of the major. We've finished all the stages. Went stage 1, stage 2. Stage 3 is just done. We now know the top teams for the playoffs. I have to say, first things first, I actually genuinely have enjoyed this major, mate. I told you, I actually think VRS has worked. It's actually given you, like, each stage does feel like you're going up in terms of level of teams, stakes in the tournament. It also actually, by the way, makes a lot of the storylines, like, reasonable. Like, here's the thing. I will give FlyQuest props for going through stage 1, but they were never getting through stage 2, and that's totally fair. Similarly, we expected eventually people like Paravision who were sneaking through, they're going to get caught out of it. So, to me, it's actually, there's quite a sort of logical storytelling narrative that makes sense to me from a normal event. It's not like those old weird ones where you'd have some top team go out in stage 1, but then you'd have some rando team that just RMR fluked it, some merchants in stage 2, almost in the playoffs, you know. And if you look at the actual teams for the playoffs, with the exception pretty much of, it depends where you're at on the MongolZ, that's probably a surprise for some people. And then obviously FaZe, who, as everyone has pointed out 1 million times, yes, could already have been out against Red Canadians with the 0.427 second diffuse or whatever when he had the smoke. Yeah, we all, by the way, that at this point in the tournament, that's not FaZe thinking about that anymore. That's that guy from fucking Red Canadians every night of his life waking up, oh, I didn't diffuse, you know, that's that guy. The rest of us are all past it. But obviously FaZe, kind of a surprise. But aside from those, Pimp, and technically MongolZ is still highly ranked anyway, you couldn't really ask for almost a better playoffs. Like, we've got all the big dogs, all the favourites you hoped could win, pretty much here. This has the potential to be a really fucking banging playoffs, I think.
Yeah, I think it's even statistically speaking, like it's the most stacked playoff ever at a major. You know, especially with the ranking update now. Faces, what are they, 10th or something?
Right.
12th before they qualified. So you basically have everyone in top 8 apart from G2. You know, being part of the player for the major. So yeah, I like it. You know, and I think you're right about VRS. Like, it's something I didn't really think about coming into the major, but I think the new seeding system with VRS as well, it's actually doing its job. It's making sure that we get the better teams to make it through, you know. And as much as we dislike best of ones, and we can talk about best of ones ruining maybe the seeding and potentially could have ruined the bracket, I don't think that's been the case here. I think the bracket seems okay, you know. FURIA is in the easier side of the bracket, but they're also the best team in the world, so that's fine. I think it's doing its job. So I think you're right. Like, it'd be ridiculous to complain about the playoff. Even if you had a team like Bait, or if you had your Rare Pain Gaming or someone else making it, like, that wouldn't ruin anything. I have a rule for myself, at least, as long as you have like 6 out of the top 8 teams in the playoff, then I don't mind an upset or someone overperforming or something like that. Or if a team like Navi or a team like, I don't know, Spirit, you know, if Donk didn't show up and they didn't make the playoff, you know, as long as you have the most part of the playoff being good teams, so you don't have a shit game. Like, I don't want a quarterfinal with 2 underdogs facing each other, who then goes into a semifinal and ruin the semifinal, who then puts a team in the final. You know, and that can't be the case right here. So regardless of who wins, regardless of whatever upsets happen in the quarterfinals, you almost guaranteed banger matchups in the semifinal and in the final. And I think that's from a selfish point of view, that's the perfect major bracket we could have hoped for.
By the way, I know where we start this, because there's an obvious way to connect to last episode's discussion, which is when we did our preview for the whole major, or at least the first episode, and we talked about who can win it, we actually had the edgy takes. I'm with you. I personally put Vitality number 1, but the edgy part was, instead of FURIA being number 2, because they have earned that status from the other tournaments, because it is the major, which adds, you know, an extra wrinkle, you never know how it'll turn out. We actually were edgy and said Falcons is right up there too. Now look, if you ever wanted the fucking Falcons roller coaster ride, we've been on it this event, mate. Like, they've had the games where they turn up and they randomly lose. Then they have that game. Thing is, though, if you watch for me, the last 2 series they played tell you everything about Falcons. The MOUZ one, mate, on paper, they probably should have lost that. Like, there's so many moments, and I feel like MOUZ outplayed them on all 3 maps. Then you get to the G2 one. Bro, G2 had them under fucking pressure too. They had them right on the ropes. And all these teams are just thinking, like, I was this close. But the problem is, mate, when you have got players like MongolZ, like what MongolZ did on those last 2 maps, that is why everyone calls him the next Simple Mate. If you see that, like, if I was the G2 players, I can't even be that mad. I can be mad, you know, at moments that went against me. But if you go and watch his POV, some of the shots he's hitting, it is like Simple level shit. That, like, super quick zoom in and you never miss when you do the shot. You can do the, like, half the screen fucking flicks and they all hit and they look clean as fuck. Like, I thought that was like, what's funny is it shows that, like, Falcons absolutely can be beaten and they absolutely still have these fundamental flaws in their game. But this is why they're so compelling telling to me, Pimp, because at the same time, in the way that they were able to steal these games off other top teams in theory, I look at this playoffs, I'm like, look, you got an insanely hard bracket. You probably actually do have to just play Spirit and Vitality before even the final. Like, those are like two finals themselves right there. But I'll tell you what, they're capable. Like, even though I'm going to go into it thinking, will they get it done? Like, I know it's possible. Like, that's what I love about Falcons. The ceiling still is always there. No matter how bad the floor gets, the ceiling is still there if the players shoot people, mate.
100%, 100%. But I think like that's what we learned, because it's essentially like that's nothing new. The Falcons is a team that has ups and downs, and probably we're the most prone team to fuck it up somehow, some way. The best of ones they did against Bait. But what I learned during those 5 games is that how much they rely on MongolZ is a bit more than I thought. I thought that you could get away with Nico playing well, you could get away with QSugar playing well, and then MongolZ would have a tournament off or a game off. But that's not really the case. Like you saw in particular in the game against MOUZ, where MongolZ didn't pick up the AWP almost throughout the entire series. Like Falcons is just a complete different team when MongolZ is not first and foremost playing the AWP, and second of all not finding any success with it. And then you saw against G2, as the second he picked up the AWP on Inferno on the first map, I can't even remember what it was. He had an AWP once on, was it 18? Yeah, he bought the AWP once on I think it was the CT side. I got 0 kills, and he picked it up on the T side, got a couple of kills, and then he warmed up into it on Inferno, where he just took over the game on Inferno and Dust 2. And it's crazy. Like if I'm Sonic, if I'm Nico, like my finest job is to tell MongolZ to please, for the love of God, regardless of how bad a start you get, trust in your AWP. I know you're capable with the rifles. It almost seems like he's more comfortable with the rifles in some scenarios. Whenever he's playing Mirage, he has a tendency to buy the rifle, even though he can buy the AWP as well in certain positions. But Falcons is just such a complete different team when he's on the AWP and he's playing well. And that's what we saw in Hong Kong. Basically why Falcons almost beat FURIA at Hong Kong, why they dominated in Hong Kong, is because MongolZ had a simple-esque performance, finishing the event with a 1.48 rating, becoming the MVP of the tournament despite losing the grand final, etc., etc. So if anything, I was maybe reminded that Falcons rely so much more on MongolZ than I initially thought. Because Nico's played well so far in this tournament. QSugar has been consistent and has been playing well so far in this tournament. But the main difference is that when Sonic is when MongolZ is also turning up and he's the one finding impact, then they just get significantly better. It's Nico can only do that much, and QSugar can only do that much in terms of dictating the game and influencing the game. But MongolZ, as you saw in Dust 2 versus G2, like he just takes over the game. Like he's winning single-handedly for you. And I'll say it like this, the same argument, and we can dive into that match if we want to, Falcons versus Spirit, like the same argument we give that Spirit could potentially win the major is donk, simple as it is. But if that's the case and that's the argument for Spirit, then that's the same for Falcons and MongolZ. I know they have other players who could step up, just like Shiro could be the guy in Spirit as well, who also had a decent tournament. But let's be completely honest, I feel like with MongolZ playing the way he did against G2 and MOUZ, I would still have them, up there as the only team who could actually beat FURIA in a grand final, because he's just so much better than everyone else. As you said, like the only player right now I see next to donk that had that simple-esque kind of performance where he can just take over a game, win the game for you, and carry a game from start to finish. But it requires that he drops the rifle and actually plays the AWP, which throughout the entire group stage was a problem for him. Like the first 3 games, he was playing more with the rifle than he was with the AWP. He seemed off with the AWP. I was speaking to Maui about it as well. Like we watched some of the games in the green room, you could see him pick up the AWP, and then he would miss 1 or 2 shots. The next time he'd buy, it'd be a rifle, even though he had the money for the AWP. So something was going on with MongolZ's confidence, but luckily for Falcons and luckily for him, he found it in that game against G2.
No, that's also why it's alarming to me, because the difference is when Zemu does the rifle, it's actually true. If anyone does go back and look, apparently he really was like a hybrid player his entire career, much like, by the way, Device and Simple were until they committed to the AWP. Like, apparently he always did like the rifle. That isn't him actually, in theory, pussying out when it's Zemu does that. But I do agree, when MongolZ did it, mate, that was. Even though, by the way, MongolZ has amazing rifle stats for an AWPer. Like, he has some very, very good stats if you ever look at like B-Trams when he does those breakdowns. Even so, I know what you mean. The difference is, it's why I always told Simple, like, you're not really an AWPer to me, but you should use the AWP all the time at your peak, because the impact you have on the game is just nuts, bro. Like, one of the craziest things about that type of an AWPer, because of how aggressive the shot making is bro, they really in theory, right, back in the day, the thinking with the AWP versus the rifle is, even if you're an AWPer, sometimes you drop the AWP to get the rifle if you're in a 1vx. These guys are better in the 1vx with the AWP because they're just so fast how they fire and how crazy they take the angles. Like, they can peek into people and get because it's that firing speed, Pimp. They fire so fast, but so clean how they hit. It's crazy. Like, even to me, Zemu isn't that fast. He's like, his is like really smoothly timed, it's like the speed that he goes. He doesn't lack for speed, but they fire like faster than you can almost see the crosshair come in and out, like, and it just instantly hits. So I know what you mean. The difference is they can dig themselves out of any hole when MONOZ is on the AWP and he's rolling. Whereas if you go and watch these games, remember the first few maps, he was just getting like plus minus 0 and he was just getting just 10, 14 kills with a rifle. Like he was doing nothing. That MONOZ, mate, they just looked half as good. Even though Nico was doing well, Kiyosuke's big numbers. It's why if people are actually doubtful about Falcons, I get it. Like, first of all, it is true they do have that screenshot meta. That's not forced even. Like, you can't fake that. Like, at the end of the day, some of those do look really bad. And when you remember the round, this is why it's quite a clever meta. It does remind you of like, fuck, that is like an unlosable round. But you've already got all these skilled players. You shouldn't be able to lose that round. Then I also do consider you have simultaneously, as you saw at this major, you have not only will Nico choke at the major, MONOZ's had his odd times where he's slow to start or he has a dodgy run. And then lastly, I'll throw this in there. I saw that it was actually people like, I think maybe Hawker or someone pointed this out. And if you ever look it up, for some bizarre reason, only on the map Inferno, Kiyosuke is terrible, bro. Aside from that, I think he's really good. Like, as I say, if Molodoi didn't exist, he would be winning Rookie of the Year. He already looks so fucking good. I think someone said it's like his 7th LAN or something, Pimp. Like, it's outrageous how quickly we just allow... We forget he didn't even play the first half of the year. Like, he just really has adapted super well. He's coming almost as well as you could hope for. That fact, like, Zonic, you nailed it with that signing, mate. It was a great signing. It looks like it will be worth in the future. All the great, crazy money you paid and fucking up Tessus's role. Right now, it's all worth it. But that one thing, the reason why that's a concern is because they can't avoid the Inferno, mate. People can force them onto it. And if that is one problem map for them, I already feel like you look at this map pool for all the other teams in the playoffs. There's a lot of teams do like that map. But Vitality loves that map historically. You have a bunch of teams that are so that I can see what's compelling to me about the Falcons story is I look at all these matches, even this one against Spirit, mate. If the big three turn up from Falcons, already you have a hard time. It doesn't matter. Even having Donk, that isn't the same as MONOZ plus Nico plus Kiyosuke. Like, you're going to need help from those other names. So I find it really compelling. At the same time, though, there are absolutely moments and maps where you could see, again, Falcons just fall flat on their face, look stupid. They could have a map they lose 13-2 to Spirit or something. It could happen.
Yeah, there's two things with that, because I feel like first and foremost Kiyosuke, like 100%. I think he's a bit underrated in how well he's actually come into the scene and how well he's done, and especially because of his consistency. Like he's not having a bad tournament. Like he's not necessarily the guy yet, and I think it will be in the future that again dictates the game and dictates the game with the rifle. Which again, let's be completely honest. When you look back in time, I feel like there's very few players I would give that label. That with the rifle that could dictate a game by himself. Prime Nico could do it. Prime Electronic in the role in Navi back in the days could do it. Prime Dupree perhaps had the skill for it as well. But there's been a lot of great rifles throughout the time, but it's not like players that single-handedly would just go in, win you the game, when everything else was not working out. There's very few players who have that ability. I think Kiyosuke could be a contender to have that ability, especially with the roles he's playing right now and with how well he's coming into the scene. That's one thing. Another one is, as I said, like with the Falcons and Spirit thing, Inferno is like, I don't know what your take is on it, but I feel like I get so many mixed signals because when you look at the results, yes, Inferno has been a strugglesome map for them, and they've been struggling on it. They've been losing, especially in Chengdu. It didn't look good. But then in Hong Kong, they played Vitality on the map and they won in overtime,
Sure.
16-13. Then they played FURIA in the grand final and absolutely smacked them 13-3. So you'd think to yourself, okay, you just beat Vitality, you just beat FURIA two maps in a row. Like, why is your Inferno bad? You just beat the two best teams in the world outside of yourself on Inferno. And then against MOUZ, they look like a bunch of noobs, and they even said themselves, like, yeah, it's Inferno, we're struggling on it, so what's going on. And then against G2, they just smacked G2, 13-4. It's not even a competition. So I don't know what it is, because if you do like the catered statistics, I don't know, you can just ignore everything else and you can make it fit my argument if I want to. But the last 4 times they played Inferno, they've smacked G2, they smacked FURIA, and they won against Vitality. If that's a bad map for Falcons, then so be it. Then I think it's not necessarily as big as a punish pick as people may think at home.
Yes.
When you hear them talk about it. Second of all, versus Spirit, they don't play Inferno. That's going to be the pepper band, right? So in that specific matchup, in that quarterfinal, that is even better for Falcons. Ancient is probably going to be potentially a third map. Both of the Lions love it, and Falcons are going to get a series where they're not going to have to worry about Inferno. They're not going to have to worry about the fact that they play a map with Kiyosuke where he may or may not underperform a little bit. I think Maui found the statistic that on FaZe he's only played it 11 times or something in CS2 of all time, which clearly indicates whenever he's playing a FaZe game, he's telling his teammates to ban the map because he hates it, right? So Kiyosuke doesn't like playing Inferno. But outside of that, against Spirit, you're gonna get the map pool you want. So there's no excuse really. And then,
Well, the joke there is, I assume in Spirit the org, they just don't like Inferno, since they'll ban it anyway. So that's why he didn't play it. They thought he was going to come in the main team. So it's actually worked out for him in the long run anyway on that one, mate.
Exactly. He played in Spirit Academy, right? There's probably a red line in that regard. So that makes sense. So I feel like, yeah, I don't know. Like I was ready to be like, fuck Falcons. I'm not gonna. I don't believe in you winning anymore. I think honestly the way they played in the group stage was not good. And didn't give me any confidence that my gut feeling heading into the major about them winning would ever come to fruition. But again, the more I think about it, the more I see them. Like it's one of those teams that if you don't put them down when you have the chance, they're just gonna get better. Like G2, you had the chance to put them down, you didn't.
Yes.
And I think that's, as I said in doing the death segment as well. Obviously, there was a lot of stake for G2, but I think every single team at the major was watching that game, hoping G2 would pull it off. Because I swear to God, no one wants to play Falcons.
Absolutely.
Like nobody wants to play MongolZ. Nobody wants to play NiKo because they know that if they're hitting the day, they'll lose. It doesn't matter. It's one of those teams where I think people are thinking the same about FURIA right now because they seem so much better in terms of team play. But Falcons is one of those teams that they allow you to be part of the game. And if MongolZ and NiKo is not having like a standout game, where they take over, then okay, they allowed you to be part of the game, and then you can do your job, you can play well, and then you can win if you're the better team. But they're also one of the teams that if MongolZ, somehow, some way comes in and he plays like he did against G2, then you never really have a chance of winning that game. Like it's not up to you whether you want to win that game if you're Spirit or not. They're just going to dictate that, And again, there's few players who can do that in the world. I consider donk and MongolZ to be the only two right now. And let's be honest, I haven't seen that from Cyber ever since the summer break. He's definitely had the ability, but he's not the player that just, doesn't allow you to win the game if you look at the opposition. So I think that is why I still have faith in Falcons and why I still think, that I wouldn't be surprised if we talk in 4 days and they'd be in the grand final of the major. Like it's probably how it's going to end out,
I also think that's the part where people take narratives and they like make them too extreme. Like I'll give you an example. One of the reasons why when people do my hot take show, people love all the hot takes about like, will NiKo ever win a major? Well, the joke in Falcons is he could win and not even be a top 2 player in the team. Like MongolZ probably going to have to be the best player to win it anyway. And then Kiyosuke, if he has a great playoffs, and he could frag out, and NiKo might only have to look. I thought he had a pretty good stage here, but he could just pick and choose his games, mate. He could just come alive for a map. Like obviously you could imagine like a random Mirage game later in the playoffs where he just does some classic NiKo shit, mid-rounds that, wins a clutch or two. He doesn't even need to be peak NiKo from like back in PGL Stockholm or back in FaZe Classic. We don't even need it to be that NiKo. And on the other side though, here's what's fun, Pimp. Even though Spirit 3-0'd, I'm about to criticise the fuck out of them, bro, because first of all, the two BO1s were Liquid and FaZe. Right, boys, at the end of that stage, those don't look like such crazy opponents anymore. On paper, those are classic teams. But you look at those two teams, Liquid was fucking trash, and FaZe was basically not good against anyone who was good. They just beat all the lesser teams and got it done against the underdogs, and even then struggled at times, as we can talk about in a minute when we talk about FaZe. So those BO1s, who cares on those ones? And then that MOUZ series, right? MOUZ, this is why, like, CS is a brutal game like War, because you're playing some awesome fucking CS. You played this series against Spirit, you played this series against Falcons. You should on paper be winning all these series. Like you're actually having some great maps. Like think about it, they smashed the first map, then on the second two, but Spirit smashed them on the first one. The second two though, mate, I'm telling you, like, that was worse than the MongolZ versus G2 one. Like, you have no business winning those two maps. Like, donk really just decided, like, I'm just not losing today, mate. And you see at the end of it, even though you're 3-0'd, brother, you have a 1.73 rating for donk. Like, that's the problem. It's actually, they haven't even fixed any of the issues we all complained about, like, is Way lost in the mix? Is today going to come out? None of that's even happened. They still, map pool looks dodgy. But the point is, boys, if someone's going to do a 1.73 rating, yeah, you're going to win some fucking games. Like, but that's inhuman. Like, you can't expect that to continue. Like, that's why for Spirit, even though they're 3-0'd, I think this is like the nightmare fucking bracket draw for them, mate. I think they could lose all these games.
I very much agree. I think everyone approached that bracket and was like, oh, that's a nightmare bracket for Falcons. That's a nightmare bracket for Vitality. I think you're right. I think it's a nightmare bracket for Spirit because they need a team. Like, they need to play FaZe. They need to play MOUZ.
Yes.
They need to play someone where donk can just win the game by himself by posting a 1.73 rating because he can't do that against Falcons. Like, then MongolZ will do the same to Spirit, and especially, as you said, like, I think that's, again, a very underrated assessment of Spirit right now. It has been even when they won tournaments in Cologne and when they won at blast bounty in Melts as well. Like Donk is probably the best player in the world at masking the problem that he has on his teams.
Yes.
Because he's playing that vital role where he's entry fragging and he's so impactful as an entry fragger. Whereas like if he walks in and gets a double entry, it doesn't matter what the fuck Chopper, Shearer, or anyone else is doing on the server. Like they could literally just stand and spawn and do nothing, or throw a smoke for him, or throw a flash for him, and they'll be highlighted as great supportive elements. When he's having that kind of impact, he's gonna mask every single issue you have on that team. But even when he drops down to, let's just say, an average dunk rating of 1.4 or 1.3,
Exactly.
when he's not like single-handedly winning the game for you, then the other guys have to contribute.
And they'll get close. Bro, that's the mad thing. He can put in human numbers and then it'll be like a close game. You barely get through. Like, holy fuck.
Yeah, that's the issue. So I agree. I think if any one of the four in the top side of the bracket, in Spirit, Vitality, and obviously Falcons for that matter, and I guess we keep the MongolZ out of that equation. To be completely honest, it'll be a surprise if they.
Yeah, of course.
It'll be a surprise if they manage to go through, and it'll be a surprise even if they won the semifinal. So I think if anyone, then it's definitely Spirit who got the short end of the stick in that regard. And I agree. Like I've said it many times, and it's not a popular take, but I really do think that Donk is masking all the issues that is within Team Spirit. And I think we have seen all the issues, in the period. Look what happened in the last 3 or 4 tournaments. Like they came into this major with certain people not even believing they would make the playoff. I even thought to myself, I'm not 100% sure they'll make the playoff, but that was because Donk only had like a 1.2, 1.3 rating. He didn't really win the games single-handedly. And exactly, and Tenair, still hasn't really got up to speed. Sway, not the guy, not a Suntix, not a Magix, not the same kind of impact. And if anything, it didn't feel like they made Donk better, which we also spoke about in an earlier episode. So, like, it's maybe they, in some sense they could fluke their way in a way, into a grand final. And you can never rule out Donk as well from winning the major, but that would be one of those cases where we're gonna have the same conversation with FaZe, I think. Like that's probably the worst thing that could happen for Spirit long term. That is if they win the major or go into the grand final of the major, because then you have to continue with the lineup. Then you're not going to make the change. You're not going to get Suntix back if he's well for it or fit for it mentally, and you're not going to look into maybe acquiring a new player because you're like, oh, we made the major grand final or we won the major. But I think long term, that's not going to be it because as much as I want to believe in it, Donk is not going to have an average rating of 1.73 in every single tournament he plays. And we just saw what happened in Chengdu, and we saw what happened in the tournament leading up to it as well, where Spirit were underwhelming, like very, very, very underwhelming, even in Hong Kong, very underwhelming. So in that regard, I feel like it's run for. So I honestly, as cynical as it may sound, I hope Falcons beat Spirit. First and foremost, because I want to see Nico and Monacy in a semifinal versus Vitality. I think that'll be fun. Second of all, I want Spirit to be good, and I want Spirit to be a team that is basically backing up Donk, to the degree that he should be backed up. He's a superstar, the best player in the game. He should have the best possible team around him, and I'm afraid they won't make the changes necessary if they actually go find the playoff. So from a cynical point of view, get Spirit out, get Falcons through, and then they'll both be set up better for 2026.
No, I have the same feeling about when they won the Shanghai Major. I remember thinking, like, look, for Donk individually, this is insane. People in history are going to see the numbers and see how crazy his performance was. And they're going to know this guy really was in, like, year one, like, tracking to be a GOAT contender. Like, it's just unbelievable. But the problem is, I remember thinking, and I was right, mate, this is just going to cost them the first season of next year now because Magix isn't going to do that again. Like this, we already saw it was already in that season getting to become like really close to win any of the games. They weren't blowing people out the water like they did at Katowice at the beginning when it was just easy and they were just laughing and all the map pool went their way. So you already saw that across them. I agree the same thing. Let's switch over and talk about the FaZe one then, because low key, like, look, the cool part is this. Obviously, Jacob did continue to have really good performances. He's actually the last 2 stages he's been killing it. He did fuck all in stage 1, but whatever. By the way, he's inexperienced at the majors. He got his grounding under him. He had some really good performances. Even so, though, if I'm FaZe, I will say, guys, if you just go and look who they beat and who they lost to, they didn't get like big scalps here. Like they also got some really nice draws too. And I have to say this, I'm not even being a hater when I say this, but holy shit, was that Passion UA series way closer than it should have been. If you want to believe in like FaZe Magic, etc., mate, they didn't even have the FaZe Magic themselves in that game. Like, the joke is they were the ones getting fucking clowned on and having the dingy diffusers and shit. Like, that was fucking... There was some crazy shit happening in that series. Like, I thought that was really touch and go. So I think props to them for making it this far, but I think it's over for them at this point in time. I think you have to have the most cynical ever MOUZ will choke narrative to really believe FaZe is losing now, going further in the playoffs. I feel like they're done now, surely.
Yeah, I agree. I think in that regard true, but it's also I honestly do feel that it's the perfect opponent for FaZe to actually make that upset, because I think MOUZ is a team that, like, I don't know what it is, and we spoke about it a million times. What is it that makes them unable to win stuff? But I do feel that if anything, it can be added pressure having Torsi in the arena. There's going to be maybe 18,000 people. And for the first time ever, and that's again underrated. I feel like MOUZ has literally every arena I've ever been to where MOUZ played. Everyone was rooting against them. No one would ever
Right,
root for MOUZ because they would always like the other
right.
team more. For some reason, even in the States, I think it was in Dallas this year, like they were even booed, for some reason. And it's not like they don't like him. It's just there's nothing, there's no aura on MOUZ. Let's put it that way, to
Yeah.
say it in lack of better words. I think now they're heading into the playoff with Torsi, with arguably a home crowd for themselves, and let's see how they handle that. If we're right about the assumption that sometimes the pressure gets too much, and sometimes that's the issue in the biggest games against the biggest opponents. They can't really seem to close out the games versus Vitality. They can't win the tournaments. Pressure gets to them. Then what kind of pressure and how are you going to handle that pressure with all of a sudden have the home crowd cheering for you? Is that going to help you? Is that going to cherish you? Is that going to make you more loose in a sense? Or is that actually going to be added pressure that you've shown us before that you can't handle? And I think that's if I'm Kerrigan, then that's what I'm telling my team. We're going to go in and we're going to do our absolute best against MOUZ. Listen, these fucking guys, they can't handle pressure. We see them lose grand finals over and over again. Now they start to lose semifinals over and over again. They know they should beat us with underdogs. Everyone thinks we're going to change team, blah, 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 blah. And now they have the pressure of the crowd as well. They're expected to win. And I think if you build up that narrative and if you hone in on that, if you're Kerrigan, and I'll bet you this, and let this be a little nugget for when they play the quarterfinal. If Kerrigan is smart, and I think he will, he's going to go out in that interview before that quarterfinal and he's going to say those exact words where he's going to downplay the possibilities of winning 100%. He's going to put all the pressure on MOUZ. He's going to, praise them and say they're a good team and they should be winning and home crowd. And, the first time the crowd is not going to cheer for him despite being a crowd. And he's going to play all those pianos, and put all the pressure on MOUZ. And I'm curious to see if that's going to affect him and if that could potentially harm them. Because I feel like in that sense, that's the perfect matchup because he couldn't really do that with Vitality. He couldn't do that with Falcons in a sense. And I feel like he has an opportunity right here to do it against MOUZ. So that is interesting for me in that regard. I also will say though, in regards to Jacob and FaZe, like the worst thing that can happen, I guess from a community standpoint, because I think FaZe knows already, like they're most likely going to make roster teams. I don't think they're going to continue with that lineup, even though Brokey stepped up massively in stage 3 as well, and credit for that after being some of the worst playing Brokey we've seen in stage 1 and 2. I think there's been made some decisions within FaZe already that for 2026 they're going to scout the market. They're going to snatch up players from other teams like Navi, like we've seen the Thieves do to Astralis now by taking device, etc. I feel like there's possibilities of making that team better if they want to. And I think the worst thing that could happen is if FaZe actually somehow, some way made it into the grand final, and then at least the community notion would be like, oh, you didn't change, you went into the grand final, because it'll be Shanghai all over, where Robs knew
Yeah.
it, because he's not a dumbass. He knew that, even though we got into the grand final right here, of course I'm going to leave for Vitality. That's a much better project for the future. So I think there's two teams in the playoff who, you know, not being a fan of them, not I guess just being cynical, I hope for their own sake that they don't do well. And that's faith and that spirit in that regard. Because otherwise we're going to look into this whole, and I hate it, into this whole discussion where like, oh, they should stay together. You just want the major and Jacob should obviously stay and he's the new future. He got into a play like, calm down. He's been average for, let's say 90% of the time and then 10% of the time. And arguably one of the matter the most, he showed that he's probably worth a shot. He's worth an investment, worth giving a chance in the beginning of 2026. But it's not like he's a revolution or he's going to be the guy who's going to drag FaZe up to the top 5 and they're going to be in grand finals after grand final after grand final in 2026. That's not the Jacob we saw. We just saw a guy that went from being a liability to becoming competitive, and that's a nice step up for him and it's good to see. But again, calm your fucking horses just a little bit, will you?
If you are MOUZ, though, you could almost not ask for a better bracket, though. You get FaZe, in theory,
No.
one of the weaker teams who right now, they're primed for you to take them. And let's say in the semis you play FURIA, but they're actually one of the few teams that's beaten FURIA. If you go back, it was like 5 weeks ago, they beat them in a best of 3. So in your brain, you have done it before. I also think that would be an interesting matchup, map pool-wise. Then you even consider, let's say Navi upset FURIA. I think you would beat Navi too. I actually think if you're MOUZ, you can make a very interesting case. Like, I hope they do play FURIA in the semis. I think that'll be a banger match. And at this point, maybe MOUZ is the team that can take them down. We did actually point out when we were saying about like their favourites for the tournament, etc. For me, that's exactly how FURIA would lose. It wouldn't be like in the final against Vitality or something. I think that's actually where there'd be a lot of their strengths would activate if they can get that point. Yeah. It's more like you just get bounced in the quarters of the semis and you play one of the teams that maybe actually you're supposed to be, but then that gives them a relief of the pressure. Like, by the way, same thing when Navi plays this matchup. They shouldn't actually have a lot of pressure on them. They should be able to. They've also had ages to look into this one and to plan out. Like, think about it. It's the last match of the quarters. Like, Blades had like the better part, like 4+ days or something to cook whatever he's doing at some point. So I think this side of the bracket's actually, initially you just see the big 3 names in the top side and go, oh, it's the weaker side. Yeah. But it's kind of like quite interesting parity, though. I think there's some interesting matchups here.
And just on that point as well, I want to take notion of that because think of how unique that is. You know that you can go into a quarterfinal, you're played. You not only have like 3, 4, maybe 5 days to prepare, depending on when you go through and when you get out of it. But you also have time to practice. You know, so most of the time people are like, you can prepare, you can watch demos, and you can like figure out what they're doing and what should our response be, right? But you're not going to change your playbook. You don't have any chance to create an anti-strat. You know, or create a default that is directly countering the opposition because you anti-strat from one day to another. You don't practice from one day to another. Here, Navi have theoretically, if they want to, they have at least 3 days of practice where they most likely can figure out what the map pool is going to look like, and they can create 1 or 2 new variations of their default, 1 or 2 new strats that are directly countering FURIA if they want to. That's a unique scenario. You don't have that at Cologne. You don't have that in Katowice or Krakow next year. You don't have that at any of the big tournaments because it's always from day to day to day. So the playbook you come into with the tournament, that's the playbook when you go out of the tournament. This time around, you have time to practice. You have time to come up with stuff that is a direct anti-strat against your opposition. And I'm not saying that that's going to change, the dynamic between FURIA and Navi, but it's just another factor that could change the dynamic.
The fun component. Think about it. You basically took the smartest coach, gave him the maximum prep time, and also here's the downside of being FURIA. You have the most footage. We've just got to watch the last 3 or 4 tournaments, and all your matches are what Blade's fucking downloading and writing little strat trees for and anti-strats. Yeah, I'm just want to see what he can cook, bro. Because also at this tournament, Navi for me hasn't shown they can win the tournament, but the floor of the team's been pretty good actually. The right players are fragging out. It's actually low key. This is another area where I was rate played. He did it at the last major. The last major, they looked whack coming right into it. They still got to the top 8, man, and gave Vitality a great game. This guy clearly knows that coaching concept of you peak at the right time and get them to the point by the time you get to a major playoff that you can compete in the game.
I agree. I mean, I think most people would not hesitate to say FURIA are massive favorites in that one. Yes. I would make the case that it's a close game. Yes, FURIA are favorites, and I expect FURIA to win the game, but I'd give it like a 60-40 in favor of FURIA because of that exact reason. That, again, when you think about it, Blade, Navi, as you said, last game of the season, they got nothing to lose. No one expects them to beat them. No. Time to prepare, time to make a couple of strats, time to practice leading into the game. Whereas for FURIA, why would you change anything? You just won everything the last 2 months. You're not going to change a single goddamn thing. Maybe you can have a different variation of your default, or maybe you can think in how do we become less readable, but it's very small nuances they're going to change in their game because you don't really want to change a team or change too much about stuff that works out and has been proven to win you tournaments, the last 2 months. So that's also a bit of a change in that regard. So instead of being at a 70-30 in favor of FURIA, which I initially would probably say, then I have it as a 60-40 where, yes, I think FURIA is going to win, but don't be surprised if it goes to 3 map. Don't be surprised if
here's what's funny. Be close. People are going to think of the BO1 here where FURIA just crapped them completely. Yeah, but it was only in that Thunderpick file where they had that full BO5 went all 5 maps, and it was like Navi was giving them work in that series, mate. If I'm Navi, I definitely feel like I'm in the match.
They were up 2-0, in a best of 3. They would have won that grand final 2-0, and then I know they faltered, and I think they lost 3 maps in a row where not getting double digits in any of the maps, and FURIA basically just smacked them out of the server. But essentially, they won 2 maps in a row. They were up 2-0 versus FURIA, and that's also something Blake can tell the team. Listen, guys, a month and a half ago, we were still only one of the teams, who technically beat FURIA in a best of 3 if you want to, cater into your own confidence and try to spin the narrative in that regard. But I think Navi it will be more competitive in that game than most people want to give them. And I'd be curious to see the odds for it as well, because I think they're going to be screwed, obviously, to watch FURIA. But, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if both maps goes double digits or if we even go to a third map in that series.
No, like I say, I also do think they have fixed some of the fundamentals. They look pretty decent, Navi. Their issue, as always, this is why people...
Wonderful. The way Wonderful is playing, you know.
That's why he'll always be under the microscope, mate, because they don't have the superstar player. If Wonderful really could post these mono CS numbers, mate, Navi would win tournaments now. Like, it'd be possible. The problem is, though, you'd look at all those other big dogs, and they all have, like, an insane superstar player, and they're the top teams, too, you know. So, no, I think it's quite a fair opening matchup. Also, if FURIA struggles in this match against Navi, there's another thing if your mouse gives you crazy confidence if you go in the semis. Like, I need this to be FURIA cooks Navi completely and then moves past. Then you can believe they're going to win the major. Because I do think a lot of fans, sadly, are doing that thing where they're taking how amazing FURIA was in those last few tournaments before this, and they're acting like majors are just another tournament. Like, they're not, boys. Like, that's one of the reasons why majors are so compelling to watch. Like, you sometimes have it where sometimes the best team in the world, by the way, this happened many times over, just becomes like half as good. The pressure gets to them. Like, the idea, and by the way, in the case of a FURIA, that's even more dangerous. Like, think about Vitality. It was impossible for them to lose that major, mate. They gave it their best fucking crack in that MOUZ and the MongolZ series. Like, it was actually all the series were reasonably close to some degree. The amount of times that the favourite is told, like, it's your major to lose, mate, that pressure is, there's very few teams in history can hold up to that. That's why the Astralis are the GOATs, mate. They could come in as the ultimate big favourite and still win everything and still 2-0 everyone. I think if you're people like FURIA, of everyone on this side of the bracket, they're just chilling, mate. They're just going to give you their best game, and if they lose, okay, no one's going to make fun of them or blame them aside from Brazilian fans on Twitter. We all get it. You're going to see Van Pet's dick 7,000 times. We all get that. But, like, I actually think, if anything, everyone has everything to play against FURIA here, mate. It's plausible. You can even mind-fuck yourself into believing you'll win the game. Like I said, Navi has that recent matchup. MOUZ has beaten them already. I don't think FaZe is going to be playing them personally, so I haven't bothered thinking through the permutations of that one. I'll cross that bridge if I ever get to it, Pimp.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good point. It's a fair point to raise as well. And it's kind of like, but you know how the community is. Like, it's kind of the notion that FURIA should win this major with ease, you know. FURIA should just scrape through. And, you know, if they don't win the grand final 3-1 or 3-0, then, you know, the other team played way above expectations, or FURIA under. Like, it's, as you said, like, it's never fucking easy to win a major, and especially not for FURIA as well. Like, think of the pressure that is also mounting on Fallen right now. Like, he's openly even speaking about maybe retiring for next season. Like, he's not going to confirm or deny one or the other. Maybe he continues. Maybe maybe he retires. I think a lot of that depends on whether he wins the major or not. I mean, I think there's a realistic world where if Fallen wins the major, I think he's going to retire. I think he's going to go out as the king in that regard.
The ultimate way to go out. Yeah, exactly. If anything, if you listen to the community now, look, here's the thing. I always tell players, if it was up to me, mate, you would only retire when you literally just don't want to play the game anymore. You'd never do it for money, or you have a good job, or you're happy with your life. Because I always tell people, you can't go back in 10 years and start playing again. Like, it's like being an athlete. Like, you only get this time to be a top pro, so get everything you can out of it now. But I do understand why, because I've actually always had a similar philosophy. I've always been scared that if Carrigan had one like Shanghai, maybe then he does just go, actually, I do retire. Because if you think about the way fanboys argue, it is the ultimate way to win an argument. I made this point, or hot take point made. I actually think that even though I get why Glaive kept playing after COVID, the joke is if he'd just retired during COVID when he had that issue when he wanted to have 3 months off, mate, Carrigan in people's brains would never be able to be the GOAT, because you'd have just remembered the peak Glaive and you'd never know what happened afterwards, and you'd even do that thing where you'd go, but he probably would have kept winning if he'd played more. Now we know he wouldn't, and that he had some really scuffed rosters. But same thing for Fallen. You think of all the bad years where, by the way, it was making my arguments look good that he's overrated. He was having all those fucking scuffed ass years. He even did get FURIA originally. He was doing nothing whatsoever. They were like barely getting through the plains of bloody Cologne. Instead, if you could retire as you got to number one again, you won a major in another game, CS2. You did it like with this role swap where Molodoi takes it. That's like the best possible narrative ending to your career. If you went then, the joke is, as you've already seen in some of the content pieces, bro, some people will even say you were the GOAT IGL after that. Like, you will get the craziest possible review. You will get your best review ever. Whereas if you play for another year, and then let's say this isn't even a diss, maybe next year they're the fourth best team. That's, you remembered very differently then. You know, people view the bigger picture. I think if you can go out on the high, it is the ultimate way to end like the narrative. Like, it's hard to beat that narrative.
It'll be sick. It'll be sick, you know. And I think there's a world where that's happening.
It's plausible. Yeah, absolutely.
It is plausible, but it's also pressure, you know. And I think for Fallen, you know, if he's the only one knowing, right? He's the only one actually aware whether or not that's going to be the case. If he even made a decision, or maybe he's like, I'm going to take the break to find out whether or not I want to continue or whatnot. Like, we're just speculating, but I have a hunch, you know, that he's well thought enough and well spoken enough, and a very thorough human being in that regard, that he thinks about these narratives. And I think he's made up his mind, depending on what's happening. And obviously FURIA as a team would also need to know, that he can't just come in like 2 days before next season begin to be like, okay, guys, I'm done. They need time to prepare for next season and potentially find a replacement. So I think there's some sort of like at least discussion or hunch feeling of where it's going. And if that is the case, then that's also pressure on Fallen. It's like, I just want to make the point, that every single team at the playoff, apart from, I'd say, MongolZ, Navi, and FaZe, an enormous amount of pressure on them for different reasons. Falcons, obviously, they have to win a tournament. MOUZ, obviously, they have to win a big tournament as well, because they just never have, and then obviously speaking about FURIA, it is massive pressure to go into a tournament being the favorite. And let's be honest, if FURIA doesn't win the major, that will be seen as a disappointment in what's happened the last 2 months. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think you can base one tournament on that, because I think they would still have been the best team, since the summer break by quite some stretch. But that's how people think, and that's how the players think, and that's how everyone would think, So there's enormous pressure on every single team. And when you dunk, when you're Spirit, that's also pressure. You have the best player in the world. He's in the best shape right now, possibly shape he can be in. And if you don't win, then you're wasting his fucking time. So I feel like you can build the case that everyone has enormous amount of pressure, maybe outside of the MongolZ and Navi and FaZe, So that's I just want to make that clear, that people shouldn't underestimate it. It's not only Falcons who needs to win. It's not only MOUZ, It's not only FURIA. It's basically every single one of them. And I think that's a great segue into Vitality versus the MongolZ as well, where it's like that's the last quarterfinal. We probably don't think much of it, because to some, including myself, MongolZ have played better than I thought they would. It's not like I didn't believe they could play well. We saw that in Hong Kong. We saw that in Chengdu as well. It's just that the peak MongolZ seemed a little bit off, with no Sensu. It didn't seem possible for them to be as good as they are. The way they beat G2 as well in that game,
absolutely,
and in the best of three, I thought to myself, like, G2 have lost, like, was it 3 games in a row to the MongolZ? But in every single series, I looked it up, Sensu had a 1.7, 1.6, 1.5 rating. And I'm like, okay, so that's the reason why it's Sensu's doing against G2. But then Controllers came in and played well. And then the MongolZ all of a sudden look better than I expected. So I do feel that the MongolZ will be able to give Vitality a fight. Also, because Vitality have looked probably the least impressive out of all the teams, that we consider as one of the favorites to win the trophy. So that could be a competitive matchup. But again, I just cannot imagine a world where the MongolZ beat Vitality. Like, not in the current iteration, not without Sensu. Even what was it Messinho who said, like, they even asked like Suntix and asked, European players if they would
Magix and Gel. Magix and Gel with the thing.
Yes. Magix and Gel, there you go. So it's like at that point, like it's quite obvious that Controllers wasn't the obvious pick, and maybe they didn't believe that would work out.
No, here's what's funny, Pimp. Everyone heard that and just focused on, they're like, oh my God, imagine if Magix and Gel. No, I took the same conclusion. I took the conclusion as they don't really think Controllers is the next Sensu and he has to play on their team, and it's just obvious. Like, if anything, they were considering all their options and they just went for that one. Because I have to say, look, by the way, he definitely has played way better than I expected, but he isn't Sensu. Like, it's just like, by the way, solid pickup. Like, I didn't know there was another good player out in Mongolia. That's kind of cool. But even so, mate, their team is such a coin flip. Like, I'm sorry, part of the reason they're here is, one, G2 absolutely did fuck up quite badly in some of these BOX series. And then also, mate, they had some really easy BO1 draws. What the fuck is that? And they lost to Imperial. Like, what? That's nuts, mate. Like, I think for me, they're a complete coin flip team. That's why I actually think, even with what you say about Vitality, I think it's a nightmare draw for fucking MongolZ though, bro. Like, you think about it, right? They were 3-1. There's a world they could have had like FaZe or something, mate. That could have been their matchup draw. So, I don't know. I think this is a brutal one. I think it's a hard one to win. In fact, I'm just going to say I don't even really conceive for them as being able to win this. Come on.
No, I agree, and even if they were, like, let's say Vitality is gonna mess it up, and Vitality is gonna have one of those days or confirm that they are shaking as a team, which I have a hunch, that they may be. I really haven't seen Vitality look great at any point the last 3 months. They look okay, but not near the level we saw before the summer break. I think there's a world where the MongolZ, as you said, like a conflict. Maybe they make the surprise, but then they will be smacked by whoever wins the Falcon Spirit game. I don't see them win 2 best of 3s in a row in that playoff. So I agree with you. Like, it's maybe an open conversation in terms of whether or not they make the semifinal, but being a contender to go into the grand final, let alone win the major, I honestly see them as the least likely team out of the 8 to do that.
It's why I do think, and I've seen a lot of people on social media say this, so I'm glad this is the angle people have taken. I don't look at it as like, well, who cares what that Sensu guy? We've got Controllers. No, if anything, I look at this run and I go, mate, Mara the coach and fucking Blitz the IGL, you guys killed it. Like, I really thought you could be, I thought this was a team, by the way, that's touch and go to even get out of the stage. Never mind, like, actually be like fucking 3-1 through, yes, even with the draw, even so, there's plenty of draws that people have had in this tournament that were easy, fucked up before now. No, I think they did an excellent job. I mean, it shows there's more to the team than just fragging. Like, they do have a system and a style, and they've managed to make it work. Respect.
Yeah, 100%. Like MOUZ is definitely an interesting prospect, and it's curious to me. I mean, and I don't know your take on it. I tweeted it yesterday because I don't know if we should drive the conversation in there, but I feel like you can make a case for every single team at the playoff that they could make a roster change coming out of the major.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that's interesting because, as you said, like the MongolZ didn't really believe in controllers in the first place, and we don't know. No one has really given us the info, despite on what happened with Sensu, if that's a mental thing, if they want him back, or if someone else or something else is coming in. But I realistically think that every single team, depending on how the results are going, obviously, could make a case to make a roster change. I even think Vitality are at a point and made the tweet, and everyone's like, is that rage baiting? What do you mean? How do we make Vitality better? Like, they're the best team. Yeah, I know, but if you're Vitality and you went from winning everything the first 6 months, and then you went into being second, third, second, let's say they lose to the MongolZ or they finish third to fourth in the major as well, that's not good enough for a team that is used to win everything. So of course they have to change something to get back to winning everything. So you may think of them as the best team of 2025, and I agree they are, if you look throughout the entirety of the season. But as a player, you're not going to be satisfied with it. And I'll be honest, there's definitely positioned all players within Vitality where you could, cherry pick players from other teams and you could make them stronger, or at least potentially make them stronger. So to rule out that Vitality could make a roster change, I think that's ridiculous. To rule out Falcons will make a roster change, they will. If they lose to Spirit, then the heads are going to roll within that organization one way or another. Whether that's going to be Kixon, Tessus, Sonic, who knows, But someone is getting kicked. FURIA, we just spoke about it with Fallen. Obviously, they're not going to change any of the other 4 players. But if Fallen decides to retire, I guess that's a case to be made. Navi the same. I think if Navi lose in the quarterfinal, despite them doing well,
I think they will make a roster movement. I think they just will,
They will, yeah. But that's the point again. Like, what happens if Navi then goes into the grand final? Like, do they then think, okay, we have to get this lineup, 6 more months to see if we can replicate that? That could be the trap of that.
True.
But you could do that for every single team. Like, every single team is currently in a position where they would make a roster change. The same for FaZe. Don't think they're going to continue with Brokey. I bet you if MOUZ lose in the quarterfinal, they're not going to be satisfied with this year. They were close, but never really close. They're going to change something, So you can always look into that. And I feel like that's one of the most cool angles for this. I think so much is at stake for every single team in every single matchup where, Falcons winning that best of 3 against G2, that is the difference between Sonic most likely getting fired or not. That is the difference between, a Tessus or Kixon most likely getting fired or not, which is crazy to think of. Now they win that game against G2 in a close game where MONIC is the player single-handedly carrying them, and all of a sudden, like a week after, we may see them win the major, and they're like, no, of course we're not going to change anything. This is the team. We figured it out, now we got to win everything. So there's so much at stake, in one best of 3 game that could change the future for a lot of these players and for a lot of these teams. And I think that's the cool thing, that none of them are safe. Outside of FURIA, I think all teams have a good reason to make roster changes if they fail in the playoff.
By the way, even though I understand for Vitality, it's funny, the same people who laugh when Vitality don't win all these tournaments in Season 2, if you ever dare suggest they could change a player, magically we're just in Season 1 again, bro, and they're all unbeatable and they're all the best, and everyone say, which is it? By the way, the actual interesting thing about Vitality is you can also make the argument that, I actually think the only player who might not have fucked up Season 2 was MOUZ, because his role's just not as big. I think the rest all have, Zero had a solid month and a half, by the way, where he was just off his game, a bit like Donk was before the major. He had the time when his numbers all dropped and he had a bunch of matches that were just a bit meh. Rops had a period where he was just literally, a bit like at the end of FaZe, it just looked like he was baiting rather than setting up for the fucking clutch, and sometimes as a result he has to just cancel and there isn't even a clutch because it just saved the gun. Flames, by the way, has had some really fucking rough tournaments and runs where he's the guy who normally is your X factor that makes it like you're going to definitely win the game. He's had maps where he's been super fucking cold. And then Apex himself, the fragging's gone way down. A lot of people would probably argue they've been a little bit stale tactically. Mate, you could go across the board. Now, true, let's be real. I do think if you look at all those names, the only people you even do consider kicking probably are Flames and MOUZ, because the others are just the big names. You've just got Rops, mate. You're sticking with him. You also know Rops comes and goes. He goes in cycles, He doesn't just do a whole year where he's mega. Zero, you never, the whole team is fucking Zero. You're never kicking him. There's zero chance ever. And Apex at this point in time, presumably it's his project. So I don't think there's many spots you'd do. And obviously you'd only do these moves if it's a banger. You'd have to have some mega player to replace Flames. But again, why not? And also, let's add this together, Pimp. Because there's so many teams that if they sort of don't win the major should think about it, people forget this with that MOUZ angle again. Those MOUZ players might be available again. Look, not Torgy. He signed that new contract for all those years, but the The other ones are all there, boys. Like, I'm just thinking to myself, you might not rate exertion in MOUZ. What if he was in fucking... What if he played for Vitality? What if he went to some fucking top team? Like, if he went to a FaZe, like, there's plenty of teams something like that could cook in. Yeah, absolutely.
100%. I think like that's
Navi themselves, maybe Navi should be thinking about that too. I agree pretty much. I don't think Navi really can win this major, but they're a team where that's why that Frozen rumor from FaZe was kind of sexy. Cause it was like, bro, actually, if you did slide him in, suddenly I would be a lot more interested. Like, then I'd see the Dark Horse pass to a title every now and then.
Yeah, but it's also the hierarchy. It's the hierarchy of where the teams are at. Because the way you label it right here would be that would players be willing to join Navi, or does Navi have to go out there and convince players to join them? Or does
that's also why the Vitality move is real, Pimp. I feel like just like for the last 3 years, people just want to be in Vitality and Blue Sea.
Exactly.
There's a lot of people want to join that team, yes.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Let's play with the idea that you want to replace Messi, because I agree Messi he hasn't dropped in level, but he's still not like the most influential player of the team.
Exactly.
Regardless of what you want to say, you can tell me that Bit instead of Messi in that role wouldn't be better in Vitality. That wouldn't be a straight up fire.
That's a sexy move, right?
Sure would.
Yeah,
it's a sexy move. Like, you can't tell me that. Even as you said, exertion instead of Flamesea. I mean, maybe it's a sidestep, but it would be something new, and it definitely is not a downgrade. That's for sure. A guy like Jimfat. I know Jimfat. Potentially hasn't really had his best time in MOUZ. Maybe MOUZ are like, okay, we're not getting the best out of you. You're not really working within our lineup. Vitality were interested in you. They may be interested still. They want to explore if they can get the best out of him. Just like, and people forget that Rups, when he fucking joined Vitality, I know he had that banger of a major, but Rups had been in a slump for quite some time.
He definitely had, man.
But Apex and Vitality obviously saw that we can get the most out of Rups again. Like, we can find it in him to be the Rups that we knew before the slump and be the Rups that we saw at the major. And that's also something teams are taking into consideration. I would look towards Jimfat the same way. Okay, maybe Jimfat hasn't had the best year, but we saw what you did before this year. We saw what you did before you joined MOUZ. We saw what you did before you re-signed a new contract. We can get the most out of you, and when we get the most out of you, you're a better player than Messi, right? So that's a risk you're willing to take. So this whole notion about teams not being willing to make a roster change, so you can't imagine that XYZ players going else. It's such a as you said, like, it's funny with the community that we got. Like, they have no problem trashing on players when they're not playing well, and he could be gone. But the second you suggested, they're like, nah, actually, no. It's you can't have it both ways, guys. I guess you can, but you can't really.
By the way, I have to say, the match I am the most looking forward to in the whole tournament is, I just want to see Falcons Vitality semi-final, bro. That match has even the historic implications of, like, the superstar play. Because the problem is, if it's Spirit versus Vitality, look, I'll buckle in for, like, can Donk really win this game against, like, the team of the year? Like, if he can, then he just is the fucking best player ever, but it doesn't seem fair. If you actually have Falcons, the super roster Falcons, insanely mega good, against Vitality team of the year, greatest team vault, all that shit, that would be such a hype game. Also, it's Sonic versus fucking Vitality, mate. There's another one for you. Like, that, I think that would just be like, that's the blockbuster game that can deliver. That can be like the 1.5 million viewers, all the jazz that we want. Like, awesome. And then remember, one thing we didn't even mention, by the way, because I think people keep forgetting, I have to remind myself of it. Buddy, the finals are best of 5. This Dodge is going to bang, Pimp. It's going to bang, surely. Like, that means if FURIA does get there. By the way, if you're a FURIA fan, great news for you with the draw, because if they make the final and they can actually win a best of 5 against any of the teams we're referencing, we'll all fucking bow down, mate. Then they were the best at the end of the year. Then they'll have done it. Like, that's going to be fucking hard. Like, that means if you're FURIA, you're realistically looking at the bracket going, I probably have to beat Vitality or fucking Falcons in a full BO5 for the major. Like, the pressure for that's going to be one of the great. It might be like the highest pressure game ever in Counter-Strike history. It's going to be sick.
Yeah, it's gonna be sick. I agree. Like, I haven't been to the arena yet. We're going over there tomorrow to do rehearsal. But
it looks really awesome. Yeah, I saw some videos of it.
Look really, really awesome. Modernized arena, new arena. It's going to be a center stage as well. So most often the way it works with arenas is that when you have a back end stage, you're obviously taking away capacity within the stadium to make space for the stage. Doesn't have to do that with a center stage. And I think I heard, and don't quote me on it if it's not true, but I think I heard 18K people in attendance in that arena.
That's like access. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's more. I think there's only in Cologne there's space for 15K, and I think in Antwerp we were 17K. So if I'm not mistaken, if 18 people turn up and there's actually space for 18K, then that could be the largest major crowd ever with a center stage, which is that's different, So I think that's talk about pressure, talk about epic best
Yeah.
of 5 grand final. That will also be pretty sick to have the largest crowd ever, live audience at a major final between, let's say, FURIA and Falcons. The only thing that I don't like to do here when we talk about it is that there's also a world, and I feel like we've been gifted with a perfect playoff. We've been setting it up well, but there's also a world where you get fucking MongolZ Spirit in a semifinal and you get MOUZ NAVI, or something like that. That just
Okay.
fucked up the entire playoff and the
Sure.
entire bracket. So I don't wanna celebrate too soon. We got a nice playoff, but please in the quarterfinals, get the job
By the
done.
way,
So
I
no matter
definitely
what
agree with
happens in
what
the
you
semifinals.
said. One of the most important things to me is that we didn't get that side of the bracket we got last major, where you can just have one where, in theory, either one team beats all bad teams, or it's just like two bad teams play each other, one has to go through. Like, if
Yeah.
even all the teams I'm underrating here, like, if FaZe can actually beat MOUZ, then game on, fair play. That's hard to do in a BO3. If you ever go and look right now, by the way, MOUZ in BO3s only loses to the elite teams. Like the joke is like the worst team they've lost to recently probably was Spirit, where Donk just posted like inhuman fucking numbers. Like, that's nuts. You go and look, Navi would have to beat FURIA, the current #1 team. Fucking MongolZ would have to actually beat the team of the year, who, remember, here's another thing, I've never failed to make the semis. You'd have to be the one team to stop them making the motherfucking semis of this land. Like, that'd be nuts. So I think the narratives also, we've got a great spread of them too. And just some uninteresting matchups. These aren't the most obvious matchups you get in CS.
I think it's a perfect bracket almost. Like if you were to create your own bracket, sort of, I don't think it'd be much different. To be completely honest, I also think it's fair enough. FURIA, they owned it in the group stage. They've been the best team. They also get the quote unquote
Yeah,
easiest side of
agreed.
the bracket. Go
Agreed.
to the final, but no matter what happens in the final, best of 5, you have to beat most likely Falcons, Vitality, or worst case, a Spirit in that regard.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's almost perfection.
I've got an angle for you. I'll tell you an angle on Team Spirit, though, which is one of the reasons why I actually think they're the team that at the moment seems to engage with media like these shows and get the most mad when people have narratives like you have to kick this person or the team's not good enough or whatever, is because I actually feel like if you're Donk or Hallie, there's a concept I take from sports, right, which is if you're someone who's done things that just are impossible, like the numbers Donk posts and some of the games he wins, or if you're someone like Hallie, like you actually with the last roster, I think that will be looked at in history. Like I say, I think it'll just look better and better and better for Donk because people will go, Magic's, how long did he even play? Was he even good at that time? For Zodtix, we don't even know if he ever comes back to CS, by the way. Maybe just off playing semi-pro CS or no one even knows. I think in history, people will think like that was one of the greatest like one-man teams of all time, like you say on fucking Twitter. The problem is though, when essentially everyone tells you, because everyone said that last year, like you won't win the major, you shouldn't, you cooked, the roster has to change. If you then win in spite of that, because Donk could just do inhuman things, part of you will think, look, I'm always going to believe in myself then. I don't care what anyone tells me. They were all wrong when they told me. They were right, but in theory they were wrong. Like, on paper, Donk shouldn't have won that major. I always tell people, bro, this is the sickest thing about the Shanghai run, is Donk could have clicked all the same keys and had the greatest rating ever, and he would have lost the fucking final to bloody FaZe Clan, who was scoffed as fuck. Except for Magic's there with that performance. Like, Magic had 2 maps where he just left the fucking earth. And, like, I always joke, like, he just sold his soul, bro. Like, it's like he agreed to never have any games for 3 years before or after that were that good. Just to have one day where, like, the joke is he was, like, fucking prime Olaf Maestros. But, like, it didn't even make sense. But Donk would have lost that final, bro. We would have remembered that as some simple versus Astralis shit of, like, well, even the best player can't beat the best. You know, you just think it's impossible. So I get why they get so salty. But I agree with you. I almost think it's actually good for them to lose this round of 8 and just realise, like, look, so far, this roster hasn't come online. By the way, we haven't done the Blade thing. We haven't peaked properly and paced this out and figured out which events are the warm-up, etc. Actually, we've arrived at the major super scoffed, and it took this motherfucker a 1.73 rating to get us through to this stage. So if they flunk completely, I do think there's going to be really hard conversations for Team Spirit. I think right now they're just living off the fact that Donk can just save anybody's Superman or something, mate.
100%, 100%, and especially if it's true with Sunsix as well. The fact that he left not in his own terms. Like, I don't think they wanted to kick him, as far as I understand it. I don't think he wanted to leave either.
I even thought it was telling the way they mentioned that thing of like they almost made it sound like some actually like a comic book, like he may return in the near future. They almost put like something like that, didn't they? As he was coming back after the major or something.
Yeah, I think they want him back, and I think like if they were to lose in the quarterfinal, they will get him back if he's fit for it.
Yes.
So I think in that regard, and that's as cynical I think we can allow ourselves to be. I want Spirit to be in their best possible shape for 2026, so they can be a contender to be the best team in the world. And I
By the
don't think
way,
that's the current vision.
while you're talking, I'm just quickly looking it up because it was just the other day, but I have to find the actual thing to show you. I'm just going to quickly scroll till I find it. Because there was a post during this major, you might have seen it. It was one that I found it already. It was one of those CS2 news ones where presumably they've translated. So Shiro asked Halley what his dream team would be. Listen to what dream team he built. So he goes rifle, donk, nailed it. He goes AWP, Shiro, I see a pattern here, Pimp. He goes IGL, Apex. You know what? I'm kind of liking this roster so far. Other rifler, ROPS. Mate, this is a pretty good fucking team. Listen to the last rifler, Zway. Halley, mate, what? What? Mate, it's a dream team. Like, listen, I get why you put. Listen, if I wanted to be mean to you, Halley, I'd say why not MongolZ instead of Shiro? But I get it's your team, you know. If you want to say donk-or-Giro, they've done a lot of great work for you. Why is Zway the last name? That feels like he's trolling me or something, mate. I need to see him with like a fucking lie detector test. Like, did he really believe that Zway pick at the end there? Like, what does he know that I don't, Pimp? That feels like fucking rage bait. You know what I mean?
It's
good doing it. It's good.
Pumping confidence to Sway, be like, oh, we like you, mate. We think highly of you.
I know.
Post forward, 2 afters after the quarterfinal, he's gone.
That's like if Carrigan made one where it was like, right, I'm taking IGL, yeah, that's me, Carrigan. I'm taking like Rifler Twist, of course, he's really good. AWP, I'm going to take MOUZ, and then like support player, probably go with Bit, and then my other star rifle, Jacob. Yeah, Jacob. I'd be like, really, Carrigan? Come on, mate. He's not in the... It's like that joke back in the day, like, I hope she saw it, Like, it's like, mate, he's not listening to the fucking interview, is he? Like, that's so wax way. No way. There's no way. You absolute rat.
That is funny as fuck. But that's going to happen, and that's going to happen to a lot of the teams in the quarter. I always find that interesting, that teams, I always like speculating, okay, so what teams are making roster chances and who will be okay with a quarterfinal, who's okay with a semifinal.
By the way, Pimp, even though fans hate roster moves, if you're at the level we're talking about, the teams that can win the major, only one team can win. So if you don't, it's not unfair to make the change. Like, you have to try and do whatever you can for the next major. You are the team that wins. Like, I wouldn't blame most of these teams if they made the change. I mean, the obvious one, as much as everyone's memed about Falcons, is, look, at this point in time, for both parties, you probably should move on from Tessus. Like, you're just wasting his skills. Like, by the way, when I look at some of these other squads out there, like there's rumours of the 100 Thieves, there's a bunch of teams could use Tessus, and he could be really good for them, mate.
Yeah, I agree. Tessus would be a great fit in 100 Thieves, and may even be possible, to be fair. I agree. It's fun, though. It's already happening, because I just saw that Pain Gaming have already got rid of two players, the videos, and DGT have been said, it's going to happen now. I think it's going to be, personally, we say this all the time, but I feel like this silly season is probably going to be the wildest one, in the sense that most silly seasons have one or two top teams making one or two cool changes.
And remember, people know now the lesson that the people like the TLs didn't learn, which is if you're going to do the VRS core thing, do it right at the beginning. Yes. Make that at the very beginning so you have the maximum time to build into the season, and you get into that thing where you have like the one LAN you have to attend, and if there's like a visa that's fucked, you just dunzo. Like, you've got to do that. Yeah. Now we have to. One thing I do like that we're getting with VRS now, mate, is we're going to have real seasons. At the end of the season, after the major, people are going to make the roster moves, and you can start the next season. That's probably also going to be the time span you give someone if it does or doesn't work out. Like Tanae probably gets this next season. Then if it doesn't work, he does get moved out, and as Ontix comes back. Whatever you do, it'll make it a little bit more like sports. Whereas the problem we had in CS before was we all had a million contracts that start on totally different months, and no one ever even knew who is going to be available then. Should I wait 2 months? Should I do the move now? Like, it's more like sports. The off season makes sense to me now, Pimp.
Yeah, it does. And I think the off season is going to be crazy, and that's the cool thing about the major. Obviously the major this week, playoff, that's going to bang. That's going to be very interesting. But even for us, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, week after the major, next season begins. Next season build begins, and there's going to be teams and there's going to be players who I think, and you can always keep this in the back of your mind. When Payne is kicking a player like a day after being eliminated or 2 days after being eliminated, that's not something they found out, on the day of losing that game. That's something they've been thinking about for quite some time, and now they pulled the trigger. So if you see any of the big teams, just as a note for yourself, if you see anyone getting kicked within the first week after the major, it was pre-planned. It was pre-discussed. It's something that has been up, being discussed, heading into the playoff or heading into the major already. So players and community in general are always like, oh, well, you didn't know that before, and they didn't know. Like, sure they did. It's not just,
It's like with Liquid. I even think that should, in the modern day, with how the system and the circuit is now designed, that shouldn't even be what you tell someone. Say a new coach comes into a big project, you might tell him, look, right, I'm going to give you 2 majors. So at the end of the second major, if you haven't had whatever performance I want, either in the server or actual placing, that's when I'll think about removing you. Because also the other good thing there is, same in sports, if you know your contract's coming to an end and it's the playoffs now, you better fucking do a good job, otherwise they're probably going to think about moving on from you. I think that's totally fair, Pimp. These people get paid so much money. We're not saying like that they really woke up one day like, you're just fired for no reason. Like, no, you didn't perform at the tournament we need you to win at. Navi's a great example. I'm sure a lot of players in Navi are under pressure at this major, mate. They should be.
I think Wonderful were one of the players. I think Wonderful has been told, you have to step it up here. Otherwise, I'm not sure
totally
what we're going to for the future. And guess what? He's playing the best Counter-Strike he's ever played at a major. But yeah, I agree. And it's I'm glad we're getting more sports-like situations in that regard, because we've been very immature as a scene, and I guess Counter-Strike is new, the money is new and the amount of money is new as well to people, but it can be a bit more cutthroat. Like take Liverpool as an example with Arne Slot right now being told by the board, listen, dude, you have 2, 3, maybe 4 games, give us some results, or at the very least give us a reason to keep, maybe the results are not going to fly your way, but the play on the pitch is getting better or whatnot, giving ultimatums like that, even in the highest degree of sports, to a guy like Arne Slot who's paid like 3 million a month, 3 million pounds a month to be a fucking coach of a football team. Like that's just the way it works when you're getting paid that amount of money, So if you can do it to a coach in football, you should definitely be able to do it to a Counter-Strike player as well, playing computer games. Because let's be honest as well, as you said, like if you're Tessus, you may be on the cutting block potentially within Falcons, but in his scenario, he can find another team, and he can find a team that potentially could be as good as Falcons or close to it with the way he's been playing. So it's the competitive nature of it, and it doesn't mean we don't like the players or we dislike the players or we should have more sympathy with the players, but at the end of the day, if you're getting paid 30-40k a month to play Counter-Strike, that's part of what you sign up for, and it's hard to feel sorry for you if that's the case.
Pimp, who's winning the major?
Falcons.
I knew you were going to say it. Go on then, hit me with the reason why. What's the quick capsule reason?
But I can't pivot. I think it's so close. Okay, I haven't seen any team do anything I didn't already know coming into the playoffs. So for me to change my mind would be ridiculous. Like if I saw a Vitality looking like themselves, maybe I would pivot to them. If I saw FURIA play significantly worse, maybe I pivot away from them. Or if I saw Falcon, I just haven't seen anything from any team I didn't already know that's not already confirmed. And as I said, I think, realistically and objectively speaking, yes, FURIA are the favorites, especially with the bracket. It's a higher likelihood for them to get in the grand final, play the best of 5 grand final. I think there's many ways that Falcons could fuck it up, not only against Spirit, but also against Vitality. But I haven't seen anything in the group stage I didn't already know. So the gut feeling with Falcons, and especially considering now that MONICY decided to buy their up, and actually be MONICY. I mean, if Falcons play like they did against G2 on Dust 2 and on Inferno, I think they can win the major. So I'm going to stick to Falcons.
I'm going to do the same thing. I had Vitality. I'm going to stay with Vitality for the same reasons. Like, I actually think the other thing that's making the playoffs exciting is beyond FURIA, no one really did just giga clap everyone. Everyone showed moments that were like up and down, and plus also sometimes people just got not that crazy draws, So I also think the reason why is this. One, an underrated factor for Vitality is because the roster's now been together quite a while and won many, many times, but also had the down times. What I've learned about top squads like that is when you're at the beginning in the honeymoon, you want to play 10 out of 10 CS every match and just destroy everyone and be the greatest team. At this point in the tournament, if you're the guys from Vitality, mate, it's just about getting through these games. Like, the Swiss for you is just survive. You don't care if you come out 3-2 or 3-0. At the end of the day, you're Vitality anyway, mate. Like, you should be able on paper to beat all these squads. And as you saw, you actually get mad scenarios where sometimes the 3-0 team's not as good and sometimes the 3-2 team's the harder one. So the survival aspect is there. I expect they can, get better each playoff series. You got the Ziwu factor. You can still carry any series against any team out there. And then lastly, I actually do think because they won the Austin Major, I don't think they have as much pressure as some of the other teams. I think if you're Falcons, you never won a big tournament with this roster. If you're Spirit, everyone thinks you fucked up their moves. If you're FURIA, you haven't won a major with this team. Like, of all the big dogs, Vitality is still a big favourite and people expect them to win. But if they just make a good run and go out, they'll still have an all-time year. They still won all those trophies. They even won a major in CS2. In a weird way, they still have pressure, but I don't think they have the same pressure they had at Austin, where that looked like that would have been one of the all-time fails if they'd have lost that final. So a little bit of its core, they do have to get better than I've seen so far, but I've also seen that happen many, many CS tournaments where by the end, who gives a shit about the group stage at the end of the tournament, you cook him by the time you hit the final. Also, if you look at this bracket, mate, if you can make the final of this bracket tournament, you can absolutely win this event. Like, you can have a fucking killer semi-final either way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think for both of us, to be fair, speaking on your behalf, like it'll be too easy today for FURIA. Like obviously FURIA are especially with the bracket, they are the favorites, to make it to the best of 5 grand final. As you said, like Vitality, I go with Falcons. Like odds are they'll meet in the semifinal. One of us will fall to there, right? So there's a higher likelihood that one of those 2 teams won't make it to the grand final than for FURIA, who have arguably the easiest.
By the way, I do think if they don't,
right?
I think at a minimum, FURIA has to make the final. I agree. You could argue it's failure not to win the major, but this bracket, you almost couldn't ask for a better one to run to the final, though. Like, you missed all the big favourites, so I think at minimum, you have to make the final. That's failure if you don't.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm excited to announce that LFN has a new partnership with the game Mechabellum, which is developed by Game River and published by Dreamhaven. Mechabellum is a tactical auto-battler, and you have a fearsome mechanized army that you pit against your opponents, and we're going to be running a tournament. So you will have a chance to compete against other LFN fans and hosts for cash prizes and in-game rewards on Saturday, December 20th, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern in the US, 7 a.m. Pacific, and 4 p.m. Central European Time. This will be a 5-hour-long 2v2 ladder tournament. So here's the deal. Like I said, 2v2 teams. The tournament will first run for 3 hours on Mechabellum's official ladder, followed by a semifinals and finals that will be broadcast. So that'll be really fun. Every participating player will receive in-game rewards, and there will be $500 of prize pool and more in-game rewards offered to the top performing teams. Everyone who participates and all of our LFN fans can receive a free in-game holiday reward if they use the code LASTFreeNation. So if you're interested in playing along, and this is a great game, guys, there's a lot of tactical depth. We picked a game I think you guys will really enjoy if you're a competitive gamer. Plus, you could play internationally from anywhere because it's an auto-battler, so it's all turn-based, so you don't have to worry about lag or mechanics. Please join the LFN Discord to participate in the tournament. It's linked in the description, and register in the Mechabellum channel. We will be tracking your wins on a custom API-powered leaderboard while you are laddering with everybody else on December 20th. And in order to participate, you have to share your Steam name and friend code in the Discord. If you're looking for a teammate, perhaps you don't have a friend who wants to play with you, make a friend in the Mechabellum team channel. So we'll be facilitating that as well. And we will be offering coaching sessions in the Discord server to help new players learn the game. So come join us, the LFN hosts. There are going to be a bunch of us playing and fans for some fun competition in Mechabellum this holiday season. Play in our 2v2 tournament on December 20th to have a chance to win $500 in cash alongside in-game rewards. Use code LASTFreeNation in Mechabellum to earn a special holiday-themed in-game reward. Viewers who tune into the live stream will have a chance to win random reward keys by being active in chat as well. And if you haven't tried it yet, guys, it's 40% off in Steam until January 5th. It's not an expensive game, so it's really fun. It's really competitive. It's all skill-based and thought-based. There's no pay to win, so there's no better time to jump in and try this great game. Buy Mechabellum, compete with us, have a good time.